Here we go with another week of me fixing the UK's cheapest Harley-Davidson. Now, over the last 4 weeks, I've made some steady progress with this unloved little Sportster, and she's starting to look like a bike that somebody cares for again. And while the beating heart of this bike still needs a lot of attention, and the frame still needs a lot of attention down here, the front end of the bike is looking a lot cleaner, a lot tidier, and the front end of the frame is looking so much better. She's not flawless, she could still do with a little bit more paint to the frame, but when you consider it looked kind of like that to begin with, all the flaky paint, everything, I think we've done quite a good job there. Or at least quite a good job for a novice on their first attempt, because as you know, I am not a professional and I've never done any of this before. And even though all the engine and everything needs a lot of work to go through all of that paint and tidy her up, we're going to ignore all of that for a minute and we're going to put our focus to finish up down the rear. Because from a distance, obviously the swing arm looks all black, but when you get up close, you can see that is because of the rust treatment I put on it last week. And while the rust treatment has worked its magic in there, it definitely needs a bit of tidying up, which means more paint, which means more Hammerite. Now, the Hammerite has done me pretty good on the other parts of the bike so far, but with the swing arm, I just decided that thick is probably the best, so I'm slopping it on nice and thick, but trying to get it nice and even and making sure I get as many of those brush strokes in the same direction as I can while I wait for this to dry nice and smooth. And then same again on the other side, just going around the whole swing arm, just trying not to get any excess Hammerite onto any of the other parts like the nuts or bolts holding in the rear wheel. And obviously the brake caliper and things like that. We're just trying to avoid getting the paint on those at all cost. But as you can see, my plan to be careful with the paint didn't go too well and I just kind of slopped it on, but we can tackle any overspill later on. Okay, I actually think that might look alright. I mean, from a distance, it looks like it could set quite well. I mean, it doesn't look terrible. It's not the best this side, but obviously it is still wet, but I mean, so far, every time I've used it, it's dried quite nicely. Now, there's probably some of you screaming, take it off and paint it, but I explained in the last video why I'm not doing that right now. And at the end of the day, if that works and it looks tidy, I can leave it as it is, and maybe one day someone, or even me, depending how long I keep the bike, might take it off and get it done professionally at some point. But for now, I'm having a go at doing it myself. And the good thing about doing it yourself is if you don't like it, you can always redo it or try and do it better next time. I know that's twice as much work, but if it works the first time, then it works and you've saved yourself time anyway. Speaking of something I did give a go and it looks terrible, this front foot peg. Obviously I sprayed it with the wrong colour Hammerite and then I sprayed over it with stone chip. Said it was going to react, and it did. It reacted really bad, so I'm going to have to redo that. So before I strip the other one back, we're just going to hit this one with some etch primer so that whatever paint I go over the top of it with, it actually sticks better. Then a bit of heat. And some more primer. So while the paint dries on the other one, or the primer even, we're going to strip this one back for the second time. So stripping this one back was a simple case of firing up the air compressor with a die grinder on with an abrasive rubber wheel on the end of it, and we're just working it round and round the whole peg until we've stripped all of the paint. Now, because of the reacted paint on this, I don't know whether it was dry or bad paint, but it was really sticky and made a big mess, so it took a bit longer than planned. Okay, we're now back to metal on that one. That took absolutely ages. I don't know whether it's a case of the type of paint I used or whether the paint was still just soft, because it's been like 3 or 4 days since I last painted it, or a combination of both, but that literally, it just made a big sticky mess. So this is now being cleaned down. I'm going to wash over with some IPA, get all the dust and grease off. So, primer. So once again, not going to win any awards for my technique, but I'm just making sure the part gets a nice even coating of etch primer. So the foot pegs are now primered. Obviously I've used an etch primer on them because they were bare metal. The etch primer has like an acid or something in them that helps the primer stick to the bare metal. Something like that anyway. So they'll have a bit of a drying time now, probably 24 hours, while I source some of the correct Hammerite, not the hammered black. I want the smooth black aerosol so that I can paint them. I'm hoping it comes out similar to how the brush on does, or at least color match it so it doesn't look totally out of place when it goes back on the bike. So next part that I may as well start prepping, sprocket cover, because it is filthy inside and out. So gonna take it to the sink and clean it up first. So before and after. Now I know it doesn't actually look that much difference, but that inside was, you know, it was full of dirt and debris and everything that is picked up from, well, being on the road over the years and just from sitting around. And it's actually a new day because I sent this off to the paint shop, or the paint boys around the corner who do the alloy wheel refurbs, and they chemical dipped it for me after I'd given it a rinse in the sink. I don't know what I was expecting from a chemical dip. I thought it was going to be like brand new shiny metal when it came out, but apparently that's not how chemical dip works. It just loosens up all the paint. So I've given it a drill brush and a sand in. Should be ready for paint. Okay, let's put that out of the way and move on, because I've now got the correct Hammerite, the smooth black spray. So back to the foot pegs, which are primered. So squirt a bit of this on them and see how they turn out. So this is the first time I've used the Hammerite spray paint, and it didn't really pay off to try and build up layers. It generally works best if you just go full send. Okay, let's wait for that one to dry and then we'll do the other one. But if that dries the way it looks, that's gonna look really, really good. I gotta be honest. Not flawless, but definitely looking smoother than if I'd brushed it on. So hopefully that's a good one. And while we're on the subject of how it dries, the swing arm has dried up quite nicely. I gotta be honest, impressed with that. Flawless? Maybe not, but am I happy with it? Absolutely, considering I managed to avoid taking the whole thing off and stripping it and painting it, as much as I probably would have enjoyed that. It's avoided me potentially a lot of headaches with replacing bearings and things, because obviously the bearings in there are still good, as far as I know anyway. If they're not, then I guess I'll find out when I take it for an MOT, or at least once the back end's on and I can sort of test it out a bit more. But I guess we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So next I need to start taking the fuel out of the petrol tank so I can start stripping the paint off the petrol tank so I can send it off to be painted. So because there's no petcock on the tank, it just literally has a fuel pump built into it. We're gonna have to drain it out the old-fashioned way. So work out which way this goes. That way. Put it into a jerry can on the floor, and then we'll just pump it out. If I can find the fuel. There she goes. Now I'm saving this fuel because I know it is good fuel. I put it in fresh. There should be about a gallon of fuel in here if I can find it. Or find it consistently. Okay, so finding the fuel wasn't particularly easy, so I'm going to take the fuel pump out and see if we can get at it this way. I got to take the fuel pump out anyway to strip and paint the tank, so it just makes sense. So we just undo the 5 Allen bolts that I put in one of the first episodes when obviously I got the bike running. And then we'll put these safely to one side so that we can put them all back on afterwards. Some of you may have already noticed how big of an idiot I am while I was taking that fuel pump out. For those of you who worked it out already, yes, I am an absolute idiot because I forgot to put the cap back on the fuel tank, which meant when I turned it over to take the fuel pump out, I poured all of the fuel out. Luckily, it's on top of this Amazon bag, and that's just full of rubbish. Time for a bonfire. I'm only joking, bonfire night's gone. That would be highly irresponsible. Fun, but irresponsible. Okay, moving on from the fact that my stupidity knows no bounds, time for some paint removal. So, I've dumped the tank inside my parts washer because it doesn't actually work. I bought this and the pump never worked. I need to get a new pump. Maybe we'll do that at some point, but for now, it's gonna make a good place to do a bit of paint stripper on this tank. Now it looks like the petrol has already done or started the work on the tank because it has literally melted through that paint. So let's paint on some paint stripper. So here's what we got. Dial paint and varnish remover. I've heard this stuff is really good. I've had it sitting around for absolutely forever. So we're gonna put some in a cup, a bit like the rust converter, and we're just gonna brush it onto the tank like so, and then we're gonna leave it. And if this all goes to plan, I get to make one of those cool hyperlapse videos where you get to watch the paint all bubble. Fingers crossed. So, no idea how much I need. Never actually done this before. Oh shit, probably should have shook that first. Okay, take two, because I've had this so long, it emulsified or unemulsified, I don't know. It separated, and instead of being gloopy stuff, it was like wet and gloopy stuff, if that makes sense. So, let's paint it on. So what you're seeing right now is about an hour's worth of me filming the same spot on the petrol tank, trying to record the reaction between the paint stripper and the paint that's on the petrol tank. I've sped the video up so that it's super satisfying to watch, but it was actually really boring in real time. Okay, approximately 1 hour later, we are putting on a second coat. Don't know how well that first coat has attacked it. It's obviously wrinkled the paint a lot all over, so hopefully after this second coat, we can start scraping all that paint off and then get on to the other side. And now we wait another hour. Not sure if my hyperlapse video worked very well. Hopefully I was hoping to get the reaction between the paint and the stuff that you put on, but I've never used this stuff before, so I don't even know if I've done it properly. I mean, it is reacting a bit, but how well, I don't know. We'll find out when it comes to scraping it off. Okay, next up, we're back to this part. Now, I am gonna paint it black, and the rest of the engine at some point is gonna get black. Now, I know a lot of you in the comments said, don't do black because the rest of the bike is black, but when I tell you the color of the tank, then you'll see why I've gone with black. I know the tank is not going black, I'm not murdering out the whole bike. But I think with most of the bike being black and the tank being a totally different color, it'll really make it pop, or I'm hoping it will. I guess we'll see when we get there, but I'm not going to tell you the color of the tank until the tank is done. So the sprocket cover is just getting dusted with VHT black paint. It does look a bit glossy as it goes on, but it obviously will dry a nice matte color. Now the sprocket cover doesn't strictly need VHT paint, but because it's going to sit next to the engine casings and obviously on the engine, the rest of it is going to need VHT paint, so I may as well use the same paint to match it so it all looks nice and uniform once I get to the point where I've sprayed all of the engine. Okay, time for another odd job that I may as well just do while I'm waiting for things to dry, and that is the lower chain or belt guard or guide. It's a bit filthy, may as well just clean it up before it goes back on. Not particularly exciting stuff, but it is necessary, so let's just squirt it with a bit of degreaser. If it decides to ever spray. Give it a good spray all over. Leave it sit for a little while, then we'll brush all that in. Okay, that cleaned up pretty nice. Still kind of drying off. Obviously it's textured plastic, so the water or the wet is still kind of sunk into it a minute. We'll see how it looks once it's dried up. It might need probably a bit of like, what's that purple stuff called? Fallout remover, just to get the rusty bits or where it's been in contact with rusty bits off. So we'll do that at some point. Now for the moment I have been waiting for, and maybe you've all been waiting for. Time to scrape this and see how much paint actually comes off. Now the first few swipes with my plastic razor were super satisfying. You could see it all coming off in a nice gunky mess, and I thought I was getting through to bare metal, but you'll see just why in a minute, how this very quickly turned into a complete and utter mess. Okay, cleaning the paint off that tank is turning into a really messy job. I thought I was going to really enjoy that. The first few swipes were really satisfying, but now it's just turned into a big sludgy mess. So we'll come back to that later because my foot peg is dry. That has actually taken hours, nearly dropped it, but it is dry and it actually looks really good. So now I can finally do the other one. because I've now got that one off the hook. I've rigged this one up slightly differently. Instead of just hanging them on the hook, I've put a bit of wire through it so that I can actually find somewhere else to hang it afterwards so that I can keep using this painting hook. Although it is getting fairly late, so I will just be putting this one off to dry once it's done. So here goes nothing. So once again, I started out with a plan of trying to build up some nice even layers with the Hammerite aerosol, but I really have found that you do just need to fully sand it and just absolutely coat it on the first time round, because it doesn't really seem to work otherwise. Okay, back to the tank, and it has become a big, sticky, horrible mess. The paint has melted, some of it has come off. Quite a lot of it has come off, but we're also left with some big sticky patches, and it is grim. And I don't know what I was expecting to find under the tank. I thought the paint stripper was going to take it straight back to bare metal, but I actually found the original paint. If we look closely here, you can just about make out where it says Harley-Davidson. Original paint. Yeah, that's a bit mad. So when I actually get all those horrible flaky flames off, I've still got the original clear coat paint and primer to get through. Great. Okay, so I got super into this. I probably just focused for dead on over an hour and didn't even check that I was recording, but I have turned the messy tank into a much drier, cleaner job, and I've started chipping away at the paintwork, getting back to bare metal. So took the die grinder to it, and next thing I knew, I want to say halfway down the tank, but it's actually not. I am filthy, there's dust everywhere. I'm so glad I decided to put my respirator on, because I'd be choking by now. But that is going to take a serious amount of hours to do with the die grinder. It's probably a better way to do it, but it's quite satisfying doing it with a die grinder. But I'm not going to be able to finish that right now. It is getting pretty late, and hopefully I'll be able to grab another couple of days later in the week to finish up a few bits. Okay, it's been a couple of days. The front brackets for the front controls are nice and dry, and I gotta be honest, the finish on them looks pretty damn good. Very impressed with how they've turned out. I think I can start reassembling them now. But before I can assemble those, I need to unwrap these that I painted a couple of videos ago. Peely peely. Okay, so as you can see, black tip, that's the bit I painted. Let's get them in. So if I'm remembering correctly, this slots through here, other way up. And then the bracket, I think this curved one sits on like this. So that goes on there. And then the holes line up. And the bolt goes in and the circlip goes on. On second thought, that bolt cannot go in looking like that. I forgot to clean this up. Look at that. That cannot go in like that. It'll just ruin it. Done all that work restoring it to put a rusty bolt in? I don't think so. It's wire brush. There we go. That looks like it can go back in. Will it focus? That is a lot cleaner, a lot shinier than it was just now. Okay, now that is restored. I mean, it may need a little touch up here or there, but that has turned out pretty damn good compared to how it was with all the paint flaking off and just generally super dirty. Side one. Okay, pretty happy they are reassembled. That is looking a lot better, a lot fresher. I can now put these aside as parts that are done. That it might actually even be the first thing I've actually reassembled in this whole process. Still need to maybe paint the link rods later. Not really sure, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I am pretty damn happy with the way those turned out. A lot more work than I thought it was going to be, because that Hammerite spray paint took absolutely forever to dry, but landed. I put them aside. I'd love to put them back on the bike, but putting them on seems a bit premature when I've still got all of this to clean up and sort out. So even though this bit of frame is done and looking nice again, or a lot tidier anyway, yeah, it's just pointless putting those pegs on right now. It would be nice to have them on out the way, but this. So while I got nothing in paint a minute, it seems a good idea to finish up what I was doing with the tank. Now, rather than using the die grinder on my compressor, because that takes a hell of a long time and it's really noisy, I'm going to try this so that I don't upset everyone with my compressor running for about 12 hours. Now this was really satisfying. It took one hell of a long time and it threw an immense amount of dust anywhere. So if you ever tackle something like this, then I definitely recommend using a respirator, because I literally would have choked on so much dust. Now what I'm using is a rubber abrasive wheel similar to what I use on the die grinder, but I'm actually using it on an angle grinder. It's a much bigger disc, so it does cover a much bigger area at once, and you just work it around the whole tank and it really does quickly remove the paint and get you back to bare metal, and it leaves a nice smooth metal surface, as opposed to if you use something like a flap disc where you'd actually have to go up through the grits of the flap disc to get the metal to a nice smoother finish. Whereas the abrasive rubber just gets you that nice smooth finish anyway. Okay, I am well happy with how that has turned out. Look at that nice, smooth, fresh metal, no rust in sight. I have still got the inside to do because that is pretty much covered. But we'll have to save that for another day because it is pretty late and I don't really want to be running the die grinder now and getting in all those little gaps. Got to take my time with it to make sure it is prepped as well as I can to send it off to be painted. Many hours of work on that, but that is coming along very nice. So now for another job that needs doing, and that is the mudguard, because that, obviously if you can see it, the lacquer didn't really go on very well, so I'm going to have to wet sand this, then do a coat of base coat, and then before it goes too hard or dries too much, I need to lacquer it. So wet sanding. Again, this was another first for me. I've never really wet sanded anything, and especially I've never wet sanded a coat of lacquer to try and put down another base coat and more lacquer over the top of it. So I was using a 1200 grit sandpaper, just trying to keep it as moist as possible, working it evenly all over the mudguard so that I could key in the surface ready for some new paint and lacquer. Okay, got that wet sanded, I've washed it down, I've even dried it to make sure that it's not wet anymore or not even damp in the slightest. I've had the hot air gun on it for about half hour or so. So I'm just gonna send it with some more paint and then hopefully get the lacquer on. Hopefully this time it turns out all right. Now, rather than totally speeding up this clip and just blitzing through the painting, I have actually left it a little bit longer so that you can actually see me working the paint around the mudguard so that you can actually see what I'm doing. So if anybody is a lot more experienced at painting than me and you can see anything I'm doing wrong or any flaw in my technique or something, then please let me know in the comments, because unless people tell me, I can't really improve what I'm doing. But I'm just generally laying the coat down semi-thick rather than a dust coat. But I'm just mainly making sure that it is all coated nice and evenly all over the mudguard. Okay, skipped ahead a bit there because I skipped all the lacquer stage, or I didn't skip the lacquer stage, I just skipped filming the lacquer stage because obviously you saw me do that a couple of weeks ago. This time I think I've got it this time. I used the heat gun this time while doing the lacquer, which I didn't do last time, and so far it's looking pretty good because last time it had gone a bit cloudy by now. So I think I might have done it. But it is pretty late, so you're not going to find out if I've actually done that properly this time until the next video, which actually might not be next week. Now, normally I put a video out every week, but unfortunately this week my van has gone off the road again, which means I'm in a rental van for work, which means I have to work more in order to pay for the rental van and still earn a normal wage. And I got family coming to visit this week, so I am going to be pretty busy. So whether or not I manage to squeeze in any time to make a video in the next week, I don't know. It might actually be the first week this entire year you go without a video from me, which is a shame. I mean, I'll try my best to get a video out, but I can't make any promises. But if that dries the way it looks right now, that is going to look really, really good. But once again, that is all I have got for this week. Lots of good progress this week. We even got some parts reassembled now. If that turns out proper or looks the way it does now when it's dry, then obviously I'll be able to reassemble all the parts on that as well. So big steps forward are coming. Also, this thing turned out pretty damn good as well. So hopefully I can do the rest of the engine in the same sort of paint. But there's still a few things that need to be taken care of before we can even do that. So if you've enjoyed this video and this week's progress, then make sure you hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, then make sure you are subscribed to the channel so that you don't miss the future or the rest of the restoration on the UK's cheapest Harley. And just to make sure that you can check to see how that thing turns out. And don't forget to drop me a comment, just even if to let me know that you're enjoying this series, or if there's anything that you think I might have missed so far, or something I need to do that I may have forgotten to do on the bike. But for now, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.